Hey, and welcome into Full Court Blitz. I'm KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann alongside with you. We are so excited and pumped to bring you your new home for hoops, hits, and haymakers. We're so excited to have you along with us. Alex, how you doing, buddy? I know me and you have both kind of went through the ringer to get this thing going, but here we are, man. We're finally here, episode 1.
Do my best to get through the day. We've already had to fool around in the studio, get a few things going, but glad to be here. Glad to start the new podcast with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is exciting. As a member of the Tiger Sports Network for Childersburg, and also all the other things I've done for the radio station here at Radio Alabama. Which, by the way, shout out to everyone here, Lee and Michael, for being gracious with their studio space. We really appreciate that, and all of Alex's hard work as well. But I think I've always kind of wanted to just go at my own pace and just talk, because when I'm on my own, that's what I do. I just kind of ramble, and I really enjoy it. So being able to bring something together for football, for basketball, and fights now with the UFC growing, not really going to have a whole lot on that for a little bit, but we're really excited, especially with this Football Frenzy episode 1, and we'll get to 1st and 10 here shortly. But Alex, man, talk to the audience about what all we have went through just to get this going. Starting with me, I had to basically redo my entire Facebook account just so Alex could help.
Yeah, Facebook was a huge issue. KJ had created the original Full Court Blitz account, and then it came out that he had lost the phone number, or didn't use that phone number anymore that was connected to his original Facebook, which is how Facebook uses it. Is his Facebook account is tied to that Facebook page for Full Court Blitz. And so he couldn't share it with me, and he had to go in, recreate his entire personal Facebook page just so we could have I could have access to the Full Court Blitz podcast page. Just to get it going was a headache in itself, but we got it going. We're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, probably be other places. We're also on all the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube podcasts. So we're everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex has really taken the reins with the production side of things. He's really helped me out in a lot of ways. So we're just glad to be here. And we're going to go into the first part of our show called 1st and 10. This is SEC football talk, of course, your Crimson Tide, my Tiger talk. You know, we're going to go through some things here on 1st and 10. First, Alabama football has the first camp scrimmage. The race heats up as redshirt junior Ty Simpson has officially won the job, and freshman Austin Mack is close behind Keelan Russell, the talented freshman, not out of the mix. As fast as advertised, says Coach DeBoer on his freshman quarterback, Keelan Russell. So, Alex, question, I guess first off, how does DeBoer get the two backups involved, if any? And if Ty plays well, will it hurt the development to not use those guys whatsoever?
If you're going to play the young guys like Austin Mack and Keelan Russell, it's going to be starting out putting them in non-pressure situations. You have Louisiana Monroe on the 6th of September. I would expect Keelan and Austin Mack to get playing time there, unless there's some disaster that Alabama has been known to do in those type of games. I mean, a couple years ago with USF, with Ty Simpson,
I remember
that was a whole headache. So I expect them to get playing time there. You also think later in the season, Eastern Illinois, the tune-up game before Auburn, they're going to get playing time there regardless. But the big test for Ty is going to be the 27th against Georgia in September. I think that's going to be a telltale sign of whether Ty Simpson's the quarterback for the rest of the season for the Crimson Tide, is if he plays like we saw Jalen Milroe play in the second half where it was awful, or is it like Jalen Milroe in that first quarter against Georgia where he was just destroying that defense for the Bulldogs?
Yeah, and you touch on Jalen Milroe. We actually have quite several points of him on the show. I personally, as an Auburn fan, really respected his talent. Obviously, not someone I wanted my team to have to try to tackle, but Jalen Milroe, definitely a talented quarterback, of course, now with the Seattle Seahawks, doing some good things there. More on that later. But you talked about Jalen Milroe, and I think it's important to at least bring up the tendency of that last year's team, because because this is a Ty Simpson who claims he's a dual threat, and he does have some mobility, not to Jalen Milroe's level by any means, but Jalen Milroe was the leading rusher for the Tide last year in a lot of instances and got the call almost every time you needed a big run. So it's going to be interesting for me to see how Ty Simpson kind of handles the pressure when it's, third and 3, third and 4, nobody's open. Does he have the ability to make a few people miss and get the sideline? And I think really that will be one of Alabama's only question marks going into the year, as far as I'm concerned as an Auburn fan.
The difference between Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe is you talked about Jalen Milroe, his athleticism, his ability to run outside the pocket, get that first down when it's 3rd and 10 and the pocket breaks down. Ty Simpson, he's a dual threat quarterback, what he is listed as, what he was recruited as, the number 2 dual threat quarterback in the 2022 recruiting class. But he's not Jalen Milroe. There will never be another Jalen Milroe. Milroe's probably one of the top 5 most elusive, quickest runners at the quarterback position of all time. Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson are up there with him. Yeah. But Milroe is not Ty Simpson, and Ty Simpson's not Milroe. Milroe, while he was great at times, 4th and 31, I'll always appreciate what he did for the program in that play.
Man, yeah.
But there was also plays where Jalen Milroe wanted me to go bald because last year you can just go back to the start of the Vanderbilt game, starts out with 2 turnovers, never able to recover. And while the game wasn't entirely his fault because the defense couldn't stop the option that Vanderbilt was running, Jalen Milroe starting off with 2 straight turnovers did us no help. You look at the Michigan game in the bowl game, starts out with 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
That was the downfall of the Tide in that game. Ty Simpson we'll see if he's able to control the ball. Brian Grubb and Kalen DeBoer have talked about they want the 3 C's of their quarterback, or what I would say would be the 3 C's because they've mentioned it so much in their press conferences: consistency, command, and care. Consistency, they want to have consistency when it comes to passing and running the offense. They want to have the quarterback have command of that offense, and they also want the quarterback to take care of the ball. Jalen Milroe, 11 interceptions last year, talked about that and how they came so poorly. That's not even mentioning the fumbles he's lost in his career as well. Ty Simpson has proven to them in practice he can do those 3 C's, and that's what I think won him that job, is having the care, consistency, and command of the offense.
Yeah, and I think you got to give the kid his flowers for kind of waiting his turn, if you will. I mean, he backed up Jalen Milroe, but really could have been used several more times before they officially started him this season. And another note from that scrimmage for the Tide was Jam Miller. Coach DeBoer said he thought Jam started out really well in the scrimmage. The offensive line did look good. Jam got to the second level and broke a couple of tackles, and he thought that it was one of the better showings that he's seen Jam Miller have in a scrimmage. Those were Kalen DeBoer's words. Alex, Tide fans, and really Tigers fans, both with a rich history of good running game. They kind of have gotten spoiled in the last 2010 plus with all of the all-pro running backs that have trotted through Tuscaloosa. Jam Miller last year was a guy that you really never knew what he was going to do. I mean, some of his runs were very, very limited, but granted, I don't necessarily think that was all his fault. There's no 2 more important positions on the football team than a left and right tackle, because that's how the edge gets set.
Yeah.
Does your left end win on defense, or does their left tackle win on offense, and vice versa with the right side? And I thought when Jam did get some good blocks last year with a watered down, if you will, offensive line compared to what we could see this year, I think Jam Miller could be in for a good year. Don't know if it's breakout worthy like some of the other things that we've seen, but what do you think about Jam Miller in this season? I think he's going to have a good year.
When I started watching Alabama football, I was blessed to have started off with Mark Ingram, who won the Heisman, and it's been great running backs ever since. Trent Richardson, Eddie Lacy, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, T.J. Yeldon, Kenyon Drake. There's tons of guys I'm forgetting. Jam Miller, he hasn't been given a true chance in this program. I don't think he has. You talk about the inconsistency with the play calling and lack of commitment to the run game outside of Jalen Milroe running around in circles and getting yardage. That's what it's been the past couple of years under Milroe and the 2 offensive coordinators he's had. Is well, we have Milrow at quarterback. We're going to use his legs because he's the fastest player on the field at times, and I understand that. But you also ignored guys like Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, who is now at Michigan.
Yep.
But at all spring practices, Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer, like you talked about, KJ, have been talking about how good Jam Miller has been. And when Ryan Grubb was asked how the running game was looking, he just responded with Jam Miller. He didn't say anything else. He just said Jam Miller. That tells me a lot about how much trust they have in him as a running back. I don't expect Jam Miller to be Derrick Henry or win the Heisman for this team this season.
I agree.
But I expect Jam Miller to be a focal point of the offense and be able to help Ty Simpson in his first year starting at the quarterback position.
And you have to really know who Kalen DeBoer is as a coach and how he has used his running backs. One guy in particular that will not start over Jam Miller that a lot of good things are being said about is Daniel Hill, who Coach DeBoer used the words very comfortable with, catching the ball out of the backfield. It is a huge part of his system of being able to throw the ball short to a running back, let him get the yardage, uses power. That type of runner. And another guy that hasn't really shown anything yet, hasn't been given an opportunity. Daniel Hill, I think, as I've seen, the tapes and, of course, high school to college, you don't know how that's going to translate. But I think he has all of the makings to give Alabama a decent 1-2 punch in the backfield and kind of have a by-committee approach.
You'll have guys like Daniel Hill in the backfield who you talked about how Kalen DeBoer loves, but you can't ignore Kevin Riley, who's lightning fast. AK Deer's the same way. They'll be the Lightnings in their backfield, and you'll have the Thunders like Daniel Hill and Richard Young, and then transfer Dre Washington. It's a good combination in that backfield and a good problem to have where you have so much talent back there where you can go from Jam Miller and to Daniel Hill or Richard Young, and while there's going to be a little bit of a drop-off, it's not going to be something major where we're worrying about what the running back position looks like if, God forbid, Jam Miller hurts himself in the season.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And even in my lifetime, the few times that I've seen Auburn put together a good football team, we've been 2, 3, sometimes 4 deep at running back. Just such an important position, especially in the SEC West when you have just defensive linemen coming at you left and right. Another thing that Coach DeBoer did mention in practice was the slow defensive starts. You talked about it earlier, how much, Vanderbilt, which shout out Diego Pavia. I mean, he busted our tail too.
Don't give him a shout out.
I have to. I mean, I'm the type, if you beat me once, I don't like you, but if you beat me twice, I have no choice but to respect you. And Diego Pavia, his road was really, really different, but just a dynamic player. But that Vanderbilt game, just one game as an example of which Alabama just ended up being in the game, but a slow start in particular on defense. Coach DeBoer was very, very clear that Jam Miller did have a good game, but he also said that meant there were some seams with some linebackers and DBs maybe being out of position. And that's something that Alabama has also reloaded in. And linebacker is another thing, as I've watched Alabama linebackers in my lifetime, Dante Hightower, Rolando McClain, just to name a few. I know you would probably be able to name about 5 or 6
C.J. Mosley, Sean Dion
yeah.
Hamilton. There's tons of other ones.
They just have these massive guys in the middle of the defense that just have a notorious knack for just hunting down quarterbacks. And I think that over the course of the season, they'll be able to distinguish who their best tacklers are and be able to put those guys in situational football to make good, sure tackles. Alabama, usually a sound team, when they've missed tackles last year and not created turnovers, their defense hasn't helped as much. I think, to Coach DeBoer's point, I think that could really help the offense as well.
People were expecting last year when Kalen DeBoer came in and he brought in defensive coordinator Kane Womack that this defense wasn't going to miss a step. We were going to see the Nick Saban defenses where it's just dominant day in and day out. But people forget Kane Womack brought in a totally different defensive scheme. He lost a lot of talent on defense. He had to bring in a lot of transfers, teach those new guys, dealt with injuries. On the back end of the defense, you had one returning starter being Malachi Moore. In the SEC, having one returning starter on the back end of a defense, you're going to have issues. And Alabama did have issues last year. He started a true freshman in Xavier Brown. The defensive line, that was totally shuffled. The formations were different. There's going to be issues. But going into year 2, you return so much experience. Damani Jackson comes back at DB. Xavier Brown is obviously back, only being a sophomore. You return linebacker Deontay Lawson, and then Justin Jefferson's back. You bring a Colorado transfer, Nakai Hill-Green, to help bolster that linebacker core with Jahad Campbell is now in the NFL for the Philadelphia Eagles. The big thing for Alabama last year was the rush. They didn't have Will Anderson anymore. Dallas Turner wasn't there. They didn't have that guy. Q Robinson was expected to take that next step and be that guy, but suffered an injury and was never really 100%. This year, you have a guy in Quay Russaw who Kane Womack just absolutely loves in practice, tells us that he's the freakiest person in the program. You take that as you will. But there is talent all over this defensive line now. LT Overton, he was a game wrecker last year. Tim Keenan has been listed as the second best defensive tackle in the country behind Clemson's Peter Woods. So there's talent and experience on this defense, and it's year 2 under a defense coordinator. So I would expect there to be a big step, and there wouldn't be that many games like you saw with Vanderbilt last year.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's unrealistic for any fan base with a new coaching scheme and a new setup to think that their teams are just going to continue to flow. I mean, people don't understand. Each scheme has like 4 different sets maybe, but those 4 different sets might have 8 or 9 different plays in each. And then you have to know where you're supposed to be. And if the running back goes here, you have to know to pick up this guy. And there's a lot that rides on those schemes. And it's not just committing to a school. You're actually committing to a scheme nowadays. And, of course, NIL has something to do with that too. Go where the money's at. But to your point, I think it'd be fair to say that this year's Alabama team, if they can block well, if they can throw well and they can tackle well, I think they might have something kind of, not going to say dark horse because they do have enough talent on their team, but most everybody, and they're taking Texas or they're taking Georgia, and for rightful reasons, each team loaded with talent. But, Alabama, I think, can still make a push with this group if those few question marks end up being answered. Just a few injuries. James Smith, defensive line, he missed practice with a minor injury that practice game. Rotation piece, Jaden Roberts on the offensive line, not practicing due to injury. But you mentioned the depth on front for the offensive line this year. I think that's not going to do anything but help Ty Simpson. They controlled games last year when they got off to good starts, or anytime the defense got pushed early or the offense was slower out of the gate, it was difficult for them to come back into the game. How do you think Alabama gets off to good starts, especially like the first few weeks? You talk about the opener against Florida State. That's not an easy place to play. Granted, Florida State not the best looking team in some senses, but it's Doak Campbell. It's still legendary for a reason. A lot of good football players there. What do you think about Alabama's chances to start off the year well?
The way they're going to be able to start off games well is, like I talked about with Milroe and his issues last year with turnovers, is taking care of the football to start the game, but also keeping defenses honest. Don't go out there and run the ball 3 straight times. Don't go out there and throw the ball 3 straight times. Go out there and keep the defense honest where, maybe against Florida State, you come out there and you're slinging it. And then you come out against Louisiana Monroe and you're ground and pound. Yeah. Don't let defenses and teams dictate what you do, and don't come out there and dictate to the teams, well, look at this formation. That they've run this, every time they run this, they're running a stretch to the outside. Don't be that type of team. Keep the defenses honest.
Gus Mouse on.
Where if they see that formation, they're, okay, this could be a stretch, this could be an RPO, this could be a deep bomb to Ryan Williams. Just keep the defenses honest and keep the ball in your hands.
And Coach DeVore has even alluded to, some comments, we have to be more than one-dimensional in his last year. I think that was probably his biggest takeaway, is that you got to play defense and you got to be able to run the football with your running backs. Shifting over to Auburn football, a little bit of recruiting news. They are after 5-star safety Braylon Womack. He did have a lot of offers, but he's narrowed himself down to Ohio State, Texas A&M, Florida, and Auburn. A lot of folks think that if not Ohio State, Auburn has a very good chance based on location and scheme. He is from Mississippi, but he doesn't want to go to any school in the SEC outside of Auburn or Texas A&M. I mean, you're talking about a guy that tallied 39 tackles and 8 interceptions from his safety position last year, but he also went on the offensive side of the ball and caught 54 passes for 1,045 and 13 total touchdowns. Alex, Auburn shuffling through defensive players. The secondary seems to be okay. We have a lot of good returning pieces that are still young and learning that can only get better. Especially the standout last year at defensive back. We had a lot of folks in and out of the lineup last year. Champ Anthony being back really helps us. Blew his leg. Unfortunate play against Arkansas. The hit was so bad they wouldn't even re-show it. He made a full recovery. But having a guy like Braylon Womack to just kind of float around with that athleticism, and then you can put him on offense. What would a get like that do for Auburn?
I have no doubt Auburn's going to be able to recruit and probably end up getting either this kid or someone similar to his talent level, just based on NIL and the way I've seen Hugh Freeze be able to recruit. And DJ Durkin has done an outstanding job with that defense.
Yeah, I thought it was the right point last year.
But it doesn't mean anything if your offense is as bad as it was last year. You can go recruit 5 stars all over your defense and do all this and that, but if your quarterback plays like Peyton Thorne and your offense continues to play as bad as it did last year, it means absolutely nothing.
And that is the unfortunate thing when you look at Auburn's team last year. It was like you always looked at the total yardage, and it wouldn't be that far off from the other team. And it's like, okay, so we're getting all of these yards. What's happening? And if you didn't watch the games, you didn't know. But it was almost, as an Auburn fan, like I was watching Gus Malzahn and Jeremy Johnson operate in the red zone. And what I mean by that is not so much that Peyton had no talent. I mean, he had heart. He was a decent leader, and, he did give effort. But there were times where I thought when we crossed the 30, like all the time under Gus, I would joke with my dad and just be like, oh, third down's coming, run it, and we'll kick a field goal because we're across. And it just almost seemed like with a struggling quarterback last year that we just got in that mindset of let's just take the points. And I don't want Auburn to have another year like that where they can't score in the red zone. I think it all boiled down to the fact that we knew we could run the ball in the red zone, but we were scared of the fact of Peyton Thorne making tight window decisions, and I think it was just a reflection of the quarterback room. But to get back to Braylon Womack, a guy that can play both sides of the ball, we'll see how that ends up, or somebody like that. Right now, the Tigers are replacing Peyton Thorne with Jackson Arnold. Comes out of a really bad situation in Oklahoma. The offense, for all intents and purposes, struggled to find the identity in anything. So many injuries. I know when they played us, they were like 8 or 9 starters down on the offensive side of the ball, and that's what Jackson Arnold was working with. And this was a talented 5-star freshman out of high school. I think people tend to forget that because of how bad his first few games look. I mean, look, some of the throws, not good, okay? But, he thrown to the wolves. We hear that adage a lot, and I thought that Jackson Arnold got thrown to the wolves in Norman. He comes out of that and comes to Auburn, Alex, with more weapons, a deeper wide receiver room, a more physical offensive line, I think, and a running game that is, regrouping with Jarquez Hunter going to the Rams. But there's a lot of pieces there for Arnold to work with, and it's at this point where, like, if you don't perform at a halfway decent level or better, you don't have anybody to blame. Is that a fair assessment, and is it a win for Auburn to get a guy like Jackson Arnold, both of which, Auburn and Arnold, a fresh start?
I would say Jackson Arnold has everything he needs to succeed at Auburn. If he doesn't succeed, it's his fault and his fault alone, in my opinion. You have the receivers. You have Eric Singleton out of the portal. Yeah. You got Cam Coleman, who, he dealt with drops last season. I think a lot of that had to do with his quarterback having confidence he wasn't going to get thrown a hospital ball. You have Malcolm Simmons, who is now with the program after the Chargers got dismissed. Perry Thompson, who is a 5-star recruit. Horatio Fields from Wake Forest. So you have the receivers.
Horatio can play.
Your running back, you talked about Hunter's gone, but you still have talent there. Damari Alston, Jeremiah Cobb, the transfer from UConn, Darrell Robinson. You have talent there. Your offensive line is probably the best it's ever been at Auburn since I've been really alive.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Mason Murphy and Xavier Chaplin, 1 and 2 in transfer portal OT rankings, to your point.
So Arnold has really no excuse not to perform for this program outside of Hugh Freeze and his coaching. That'd be the only reason or excuse Arnold could use was Hugh Freeze and the play calling, because there's already rumors and comments made about how one coach is going to handle first and second down, one handle third down. Hugh Freeze is going to have veto privileges on either of those guys. That could be a big issue for Jackson Arnold, because last year he ended up dealing with 2 different play callers, and that you could, for any quarterback, that's going to be a huge confidence issue at any level, NFL, college, high school, little league, is switching from one play caller to another. You don't know what the tendencies are for that play caller to another.
Yeah, and I think to your point, this season, getting Eric Singleton, it was such a shot in the arm, I think, and I think ultimately the reason Jackson Arnold wanted to come was because, hey, I have route running finesse. Some scouts are saying Eric Singleton is the best route runner in the upcoming draft. And then you mentioned Horatio Fields, who I think might be one of the most underrated transfer portal pickups anywhere. I've seen that he is very consistent with blocking in practice, and to be a receiver that can catch and block in the SEC, coaches are going to come after you because, we love running the football and setting the tone. Another thing that the Tigers did have right was another quarterback, Deuce Knight, the talented 5-star freshman, the kid from Mississippi. A lot of people close to the program would really love each to get their chance to start. There's no sign of that for Deuce for this upcoming year. However, Coach Freeze does intend on using Deuce, quote, situationally. And I think that's to what we said earlier about Ty Simpson and some of the guys behind him, Mack and Russell. I think it's kind of the same instance for Auburn in that you have Jackson Arnold doesn't have a lot of experience, but he does have some. And then Deuce Knight can come in maybe with some run packages, some non-pressure situations, especially in lesser games. How do you think Deuce gets used as in his freshman campaign, if any? And if he doesn't get used, do you think that he will stick around for his sophomore year?
I would say Deuce would probably get used similar to the way Arch Manning got used last year at Texas, where Arch Manning was sprinkled in here and there to give Quinn Ewers a little bit of a break on some running packages. Now, do I think Deuce Knight's going to get a lot of running packages like Arch Manning? Probably not. Arch Manning's a better athlete when it comes to that than Deuce Knight is. But the Deuce Knight and then Ashton Daniels are both going to get their chances to prove themselves this year in practice and in games. Auburn has similar games to Alabama where it's just a kind of give me game, or it should be a gimme game for Auburn in the past couple of years.
Yeah, don't
the
say
gimme
that.
games haven't been gimme games.
No.
New Mexico State comes to mind. But the difference from this year's team from last year's team is last year, Peyton Thorne, Hugh Freeze felt like Peyton Thorne, and there was a humongous drop-off to Holden Garner, Walker White, and the other guys I had in that room. This year, I feel like if Jackson Arnold struggles, the drop-off from Arnold to a guy like Ashton Daniels or Deuce Knight is not as big.
That's a great
People
point.
forget about how Ashton Daniels, he played at Stanford, and while he struggled with turnovers, he had 20 interceptions in 2 years. Stanford has been pretty bad the past couple of years. I don't think that's indicative of how talented Ashton Daniels can be with weapons like Eric Singleton, Cam Coleman, and Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb in the backfield. So I don't think if Jackson Arnold struggles, Auburn's going to be that much hurt, because you have guys like Deuce Knight and Ashton Daniels behind him that can come in, and I don't see that big of a drop-off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a really good point that you brought up there, because I think Ashton Daniels was a product of kind of what we talked about with Arnold. Is like you look around and, what's here? And it's Stanford football, man. Nothing's been here since Christian McCaffrey left and is in the NFL now. But I think for Auburn as a fan, I would just love to see us, just engage for 4 quarters. I think last year we even moved the ball with Peyton Thorne and even scored some points in some games, but we would get off to these decent starts, 10-point lead, 14-point lead, and we would just really, really struggle to close the game. And having a freshman quarterback in either way, basically, because Jackson Arnold, he isn't a freshman, but he didn't play much last year, so he's new to us. I think either way we go about it, there's going to be some risk there. So you may as well just, try to put Arnold in the best positions and spell him with Deuce Knight when possible. For the Tigers on defense, we talked about it earlier in the show. I thought last year the secondary was the best part of the team. We did give up a few big plays to some elite offenses, but as far as open field tackling, I have watched Auburn secondaries be about as good at open field tackling as I am a cappella singing. I watched.
Can we get a rendition from you?
No, absolutely not. I'd be scared that that TV screen behind you would probably crack. But I can remember guys like Jermaine Whitehead and Jonathan Mincy, who weighed 170 pounds soaking wet to start off with. So if you're already giving up some size to these big specimens that you got to guard at receiver, you got to at least take good angles, Alex. You got to at least hit them in the right spot. And I thought last year, to your point about DJ Durkin, last year was the first time I have seen Auburn secondaries actually come up looking to hit someone. And it was really good for me to see. For an Auburn fan, when we've been good, we've had some good corners. And you mentioned the last good team we had really was Jared Stidham's year. And on defense that year, we had guys like Javaris Davis and Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. You have a lot of guys that could play on that level of the defense. And I think adding linebackers this year, as well as some really good freshman defensive linemen, we should do fairly well. We're at the 30-minute mark of our show, actually probably a little past that. We're going to come back and have the final blitz at the buzzer, football frenzy edition. Don't miss it. Yeah, welcome back. It's Full Court Blitz. We're here with the final blitz at the buzzer. KJ McCurley, Alex Baumann. We've enjoyed having you along so far. And let's get to some SEC news. How about this? John Gruden wants to coach in the SEC, Alex. And for me, I think that makes about as much sense as me auditioning for American Idol. But he says he wants it. I'm just a different age, John. If you say something to tick a kid off, which John Gruden tends to tick people off, there's two things waiting on that kid. More money through NIL at a different school, and a portal that makes it so easy to get there. And he's never dealt with that dimension. Alex, is John just bored, or is there somewhere in the SEC that you think he could legitimately long-term call home? I mean, this was a very good football coach and NFL analyst. What do you think is his actual ability to coach in the SEC long-term?
If Bill Belichick can get a job at North Carolina, I'm sure John Gruden can get a job at the SEC. John Gruden, who won his lawsuit against the NFL when they leaked all those emails and phone calls and text messages, I see him being back in football, whether it's college football or the NFL. He'll get a job. He's that talented, that smart when it comes to just if you watched his quarterback conversations he's had in the film room, dating back, feels like over decades. He is so intelligent, one of the smartest minds in football around right now. And I think it'd be idiotic for a team in the SEC that's kind of middling towards the end of the line. Mississippi State, Arkansas is kind of down right now. You'd be idiotic to not even at least give him a look or an interview.
No, I think I agree. I do believe that John Gruden says a little too much sometimes, but here's my thing with Gruden, that I do think college football would be beneficial for him, whereas the NFL was not. He's not going to have the front office. There's not a front office. There's not a, let's go trade for this guy, or I'd like to give up my first and third and this and that. And he's just going to be able to coach with NIL and everything else, a lot of the booster packages for these kids is handled by the assistant coaches. It's assessed by the athletic department how much they can give, and the coach just says yay or nay on the scheme fit. Basically, that's college football now, whether we like it or not. But I think, John, to your point, I think he could find his way into an SEC team that's just searching for hope. And I think Mississippi State is not too far from that. I mean, obviously, losing the legendary coach Mike Leach has still left that program with some doubt. And I really enjoyed Mike Leach as a fan. But on to the next. Chris Deering thinks Oklahoma is a college football playoff team. Now, Alex, don't get me wrong. I think John Mateer can be a baller. And I think Jaden Ott at running back was a great addition to that backfield to help him out. But those guys don't play defense. Danny Strutzman is gone. Let's just go through the schedule very, very quickly. Michigan at Oklahoma, and you can't count Michigan out. Auburn at Oklahoma, and Auburn up and down, but still, that's a game we can compete in. And then you go on the road to Texas with Arch Manning, and then a South Carolina team who I think might be one of the most underrated teams in football. I love Lenoris Sellers. I think he's an all-in athlete, outstanding kid. Then they go home to host Ole Miss. Doesn't get any easier. They go to Neyland Stadium in Tennessee, a tough environment, and then Bryant Denny to play the Tide before the last week of the year hosting LSU. I'm not an Oklahoma hater, Alex, but the playoff standard is usually 10 games, and you're in. It's just really hard to see 10 wins on that schedule. I'm thinking 6-6 could realistically happen for these guys. But, could they win 8, 9, 10 games?
Oklahoma is one of the about 3 or 4 teams in the SEC that I look at them and I go, this team's either going to make the college football playoff and go 10-2, or they're going to go 6-6 and barely make a bowl game. And it really rides on that offense and the retooling and reworking they've done. You bring in John Mateer to replace Jackson Arnold, who should be an upgrade considering the way Mateer played at Washington State last year. You also bring in Mateer's offensive coordinator from Washington State last year to be his offensive coordinator
that
again.
Was a big thing.
You bring in running back Jaden Ott from California. Huge get, upgrades that running back room immensely. Your receiving room is still kind of thin as is, but you bring in transfers. You still have Deion Burks there. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year. Wasn't really at all last year. You return all 5 of your offensive linemen, all 5 of those starters. You bring in some transfers, Derek Simmons and Luke Belinko. So you have guys there to help out if they do get injured, like they ended up getting injured last year. But the offense is going to be the indication for this team because the defense under Brent Venables is going to be good regardless. It's kind of like the defense of Kirby Smart. He can have a bunch of 3 and 4 stars, even 2 stars out there. It's going to be good because of the way he coaches it.
And I believed in the Brent hire. I'm a really big fan of Brent Venables. I think he's a great defensive mind. He was honestly a guy that I wished Auburn would have considered for the job before we ended up hiring Brian Harsin. I think he was the best non-head coach in football when he worked for Clemson under Dabo Swinney as DC. Now he still has his handprints on that defense there. Oklahoma, we'll call them a dark horse team for now, just a nightmare of a schedule. How about the studs and duds? This is the part of the show where me and Alex will give you our week. These will update weekly. Our studs and duds rankings. For me, I've got Mississippi State at 16. They are definitely a dud, just not a lot there. Kentucky, miserable offense at times last year, and Auburn barely beat them. So,
like a lot of teams.
Yeah, exactly. So 15 for Kentucky. I've got Vanderbilt at 14. They're listed as a dud. That can change. Vanderbilt is one of those teams that I believe in Clark Lee as a coach. I think he can coach his way out of some tough games. And then we go to Missouri at 13, Arkansas at 12. Arkansas, I have at 12 only because they have a few returning pieces on offense, but a lot of reshuffling, so that is subject to drop for them. Oklahoma at 11, we've already talked about them. Tennessee at 10. Tennessee was a team that a lot of people were high on to start of last year. Some quarterback controversy with the young man's last name that I don't ever even try to pronounce.
I just say I'm a leave it because he leave the program.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. And I think Tennessee, that's about their ceiling, is fans are going to leave the stadium. And then we go down into the top top 9, and Texas A&M at 9. This could go up. I think Texas A&M has enough playmakers to win a few games. Just a tough schedule. I have my Tigers at 8, middle of the pack. I think with everything we got back and everything that we recruited, we're going to be in position to win some more games. I think there will still be 2 or 3 that'll be really tough for us. South Carolina at 7. They're one of my 4 dark horse teams. I talked about Lenora Sellers, but there's a lot to like about that South Carolina team. Their highest preseason ranking in quite some time. We'll get to that at another day. Ole Miss at 6. They are the dark horse as well because Lane Kiffin always going to draw up some good offensive plays. Alex, there's enough there in that program. How about Florida at 5? I think Florida is a huge jump from last year. This year, I don't think they're going to beat the harder teams on their schedule. However, there were games last year that they could have won. And I think another year for DJ Lagway, I think some of those L's go the other way.
They could have beat Georgia if he didn't get hurt.
Absolutely. I agree with that. They controlled the line of scrimmage in that game. LSU is at 4. They're a dark horse. Nussmeier had a really scary injury. It looked really, really bad, but turns out it's pretty minor, so he's good to go. Alabama is at 3. I think for me as an Auburn fan, to put them this high, it kind of pains me a little bit because it's a year that they're supposed to lose everything, and they're still number 3. But make no mistake about it, Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. I think Alabama made a good hire with him, and I also think there's enough to like with the supporting cast. You talk about Ryan Williams and taking college football by storm last year at his young age. Georgia at number 2. I think Kirby Smart has got a really good thing going, minus all the arrest. And then at number 1, Texas. And this is controversial. A lot of people go up and down between Texas and Georgia. Alex, for 1 and 2. I think that Texas gets the edge right now, not just because of Arch Manning, but also they got some athletic pieces in that defense back. And that was an area for Texas before last season that had really, really struggled, much like Oklahoma before they hired Venables. I think that this year's Texas team is as advertised. I don't think they're going to dud out.
I don't think they dud out either, but there are 2 teams I disagreed with you on this studs or duds list.
Let's hear them.
The first one, I guess we'll start out higher up on the list, being South Carolina up at 7. I have them being a dud this year. I love Lenora Sellers, think he has all the talent in the world. Don't love the running back room. You lose Rocket Sanders to the NFL. He was a big part of their game plan last year. Nick Harbor, he's a freak athlete. He's kind of like Quay Rousseau at Alabama, where he's one of the freakiest players I've ever seen. Lightning fast, super tall. But what do you have outside of him offensively for Lenora Sellers to throw to and get the ball to? That's the question offensively. And then you look defensively. Dylan Stewart, kind of like Lenora Sellers. We know what we get with him. He's going to be a game wrecker, maybe end up being the best defensive player in the country next year. But what's around him? You lose DBs, Nikki Minwari, who's on the Seahawks now, O'Donnell Fortune, who played DB last year. 2 huge losses in that secondary. You lose defensive end Kyle Kennard, who won the Bronco Nagurski Award last year.
Yes, good player.
So losing those 3 guys is humongous. You lose guys on the interior as well. The defense has been decimated due to senior leadership leaving. And I don't think they really addressed that in the portal as well as they should have, being an SEC program. They didn't get that top-level recruit to replace Nikki Minwari at safety, and didn't get that game wrecker at defensive tackle to help out Dylan Stewart. This team lacks a lot of weapons, and I think everybody's kind of blinded by Lenora Sellers and how great he is and how freaky Nick Harbor is. They just don't see the ineptitudes of the rest of the team.
Yeah, I agree with that, Alex.
And
South Carolina, one of those teams could go either way. He disagreed with me, but that's okay. We're all for a friendly debate here on Full Court
and then I
Blitz.
have another one, KJ.
Yeah, okay.
I have another disagreement. I actually have Texas A&M higher than you did. I think they can be a dark horse this year. Marcel Reed, he was inconsistent last year, but the offense benefits a quarterback like him where he can take the short throws. Colin Klein's going to make it easy for him. He has one of the best offensive lines in the country. You talk about Trey Zune, his left tackle, Chase Bisontis, an offensive guard there. Those are kind of the mainstays.
How high do you have A&M, just for conversation's sake?
I would say they're right above Florida.
Okay. Okay. So you think they could potentially be better than South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Auburn, and that's not out of the realm to say.
And I also think that A&M has the second best running back room in the country behind Penn State. You Le'Veon Moss, Reuben Owens, Amari Daniels, E.J. Smith. The receiving core could have improvement there, but you bring in Casey Conception from NC State. So there's improvement on that offense. They have one of the better offensive lines. The defense, it's under Mike Elko. He's a defensive-minded head coach. It had issues last year, bringing some portal guys. You have your linebackers are back for another year under him. The defense will be fine under Elko, and that was the big area of concern for them last year was the defense.
Yeah, you give up 40-plus to Auburn. I mean, it's not really a great defense, but I think Mike will have a better year on DC this year. Really, you could say LSU on my list at 4 all the way up to Texas A&M at 9. 4 through 9 on either of our lists could pretty much go up or down. Those are those middle-of-the-pack teams fighting for a chance in the playoff. It is 12 teams, so if other conferences bottom out, some chance and some wiggle room there. But we're at the last segment of our show here coming up as the final Blitz at the buzzer. We'll talk about the fantasy corner where I go through some fantasy football things. And we'll also talk about our trending topics. That's tough or that's enough. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Full Court Blitz, final Blitz at the buzzer. We are going to go over the segment of our show where we discuss trending topics, and that's tough or that's enough. Is it tough? Do we like it? Or is that enough? Number 1, Texas has its first number 1 preseason AP ranking in school history. That was hard for me to believe when I read that because of all the good football teams at Texas, but it is. Is Texas all they say they are? And fans are calling it Arch Madness. Is that tough, Alex, or is that enough?
I think that's tough. I'm buying into the Arch hype. He has the legacy. Peyton Manning, Eli Manning being his uncles, Archie Manning being his grandfather. Steve Sarkisian is the offensive mind there. He's probably the best offensive mind in college football right now, alongside Lane Kiffin. Crazy that they were both offensive coordinators at Alabama. Great times.
Insane.
He has tons of weapons around him. I can go down the list of running backs: Wisner, C.J. Baxter, receivers: Khalil Lockett. There's just so many weapons he has around him. The offensive line is the big issue for Arch Manning. You lose your bookends and Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams, your left and right tackle. They have to replace
Banks
those.
Was one of the best offensive tackles I've watched.
Yeah, and you lose the offensive guard Hayden Connor, so you replace 3 starters from last year. But when you had the transfer portal, you can do anything nowadays. The defense, you lose 2 DBs and Jade Barron and Andrew Makuba. 2 huge losses. Barron won the Jim Thorpe Award for the best defensive back last year. But again, you reload in the transfer portal. You also return guys in Malik Muhammad and Michael Taffy who are super talented at those positions. And you also return some guys in Anthony Hill Jr. and Colin Simmons who could easily be Defensive Player of the Year in the SEC and the country.
Yeah, I really like Colin Simmons. He was explosive last year. Texas's defense is just probably as good as their offense, if not maybe a little better, I would say, as far as ratings. Second topic, Tom Brady on NIL, one of the best quarterbacks ever, says, teach your kids the right values. It should be the parent, be a good parent, teach your kids the right values, what's going to sustain them in their career over a period of time, be it football, business, or whether it's teaching, law school, medical school, or a trade, whatever you want to do, you're going to have to go through hard things in life. You're going to have to make tough choices. The value isn't always about the last dollar. Now, NIL is a continuing topic of discussion. I think everyone agrees that players getting paid for their likeness is probably okay, but it just needs to be scaled back. I think that's the common thing for most folks. Me and you have not discussed NIL, so this will be a great time. This quote from one of the greatest athletes and QBs ever, is that tough, or have you heard enough?
That's tough. I agree with what Tom Brady said. Too many people nowadays just value that dollar. Where can I make that? Where can I make that money? And especially in the landscape of college sports, it's who's paying me the most, not where can I be the best athlete, where can I grow as an athlete. It's, does Tulane pay me $2 million, or does Tennessee pay me $2 million? Does Georgia upgrade that to $4 million? It's not, well, if I go to Georgia, I get to learn under Kirby Smart as a defensive back, and he's one of the best defensive-minded head coaches in college football. I'm a quarterback. I get to go to Texas. I learn under Steve Sarkisian, who I talked about is the best offensive mind in college football. Or do I go get that extra $2 million and go play for Texas State? Not to take anything away from Texas State, but going from Steve Sarkisian to Texas State, what's your NFL looking like? What's that looking like for the future? Is it worth taking the extra $2 million and forfeiting the countless endorsements, the contract you get as a first-round pick or second-round pick? Is it worth forfeiting that to make that extra $2 million, that quick buck right then? And that's what not only athletes, but just regular people are stuck on nowadays, is where can I make that next quick buck? Absolutely. Where can I make that extra $200?
Yeah, and you're right on the money. I think it's tough as well from Tom. Another thing to go along with that is that the money aside, like I've seen NFL players who have experienced NIL when they get drafted and they'll post on their Instagrams, "Mama, we made it." What did you make it from? You were making $5 million in college. I don't understand that. Last topic, Jared Mayo says, look, once those guys cross the white lines, there's nothing I can do for them or any coach can do for them once they cross the white line. I get the concept of what Jared Mayo is saying, but I mean, how are you going to say there's nothing you can do for your team? The best coaches make sideline and game adjustments. There's a reason you see certain coaches flourish and others bottom out, and it's called involvement and effort. And consistent effort is always a good thing. I know the roster wasn't the best in New England for Jared Mayo.
That's an understatement.
I get it. But the comment to me really would have ticked me off as a player to have a coach with that mentality, I think. But maybe that's why he was a great player and not a great coach. So you look at Mike Vrabel, wasn't there a week, and he's already getting into fights, breaking them up at the practice games. Yeah. I love Mike Vrabel. Alex, is Jared Mayo's comments tough, or is that enough?
That's enough. He just needs to be quiet and worry about getting another coaching job wherever that might be. Coaches make decisions throughout the game that impact the game. When I was doing some prep for this show, and when you showed me this quote, I thought about two things right off the top of my head. Was Nick Saban's onside kick in the 2016 national championship against Clemson in the fourth quarter with 2:34 to go. Yeah. He made that decision. The players didn't make that decision. Nick Saban made that decision and said, this is the game-changing moment. Yep. I'm putting it on the line right here. Yep. And then on the flip side, I think about Kirby's fake punt attempt with Justin Fields in the 2018 SEC championship, where he was trying to do something funny and trying to get that first down, but it just blundered him, and they really could never recover in that game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Coaching does absolutely happen in the game. I don't know what Jared Mayo is saying. Maybe he should just enjoy his player money. That's tougher. That's enough. We'll come back here in just a second with Fantasy Corner, Bust or Trust, my weekly picks for a few positions. Listen up. Tune in. Welcome back to the Full Court Blitz, final blitz at the buzzer. This is KJ and Alex. We're doing the Fantasy Corner, Bust or Trust. These are for week one official. This is not preseason. Most starters don't play. Quarterback bust, Dak Prescott in week one versus the Eagles. And listen, a lot of Cowboys fans are divided on Dak. I think Dak had some great years for the team in Texas in blue and white, but I also think Dak has single-handedly hurt them and fleeced them of some money. And I think that versus an Eagles defense, Alex, that just flies around to the football, a lot of former SEC players on that defense, big, powerful. I think Dak Prescott is the bust for the week. for the quarterback position. 27 points. Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that.
I'm not a believer in Dak Prescott, and it's not only his fault. It's the fact his offensive line has really taken a step back since you had a few retirements and departures. Zach Martin, Tyron Smith.
Was really good.
He also had injuries in practice this year. The running back room since Ezekiel Elliott's rookie year and years after that, there's no one there. You acquire George Pickens this offseason. You have two weapons at receiver now in him and CeeDee Lamb. You have no running back room. Your offensive line's not great. And when you have a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who's not Patrick Mahomes, he's not Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, he needs a little
He's
help.
not Josh Allen. He needs help somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right on. My quarterback trust, Jaden Daniels, excellent momentum coming in from last season. I would know as a fantasy owner because he saved me. I had Jared Goff and Jaden Daniels. I got both of them in the draft. Of course, Jared Goff had some injuries in and out of the lineup, didn't throw the ball efficiently at times. Jaden Daniels ended up being a good starting quarterback for fantasy owners. I think he's only listed at about 28 points in most standard fantasy leagues, but listen, he's got the ability. This was a kid at LSU that just made every single play that needed to be made.
This is like the complete opposite of Dak Prescott, where Jaden Daniels doesn't need a whole lot of help to be successful. Last year, didn't have a whole lot of help outside of a guy in Terry McLaurin. I think he'll be perfectly fine with the weapons he has right now, regardless if they're good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Running back bust, Jonathan Taylor, playing a tricky defense in Miami. His 20 projection, I think, is really generous, and it's crazy to say that for a guy that we got really spoiled to as fantasy owners. His rookie year just absolutely lit up fantasy, bunch of 30-point outputs, everything. It was hard to bring to the ground, but not there anymore. Running back trust is definitely Ashton Jeanty. He's a rookie sensation. He's playing for Chip Kelly, be it Chip Kelly as Chip Kelly. He's had his shortcomings. He's also produced two top running offenses in the league. I think Ashton Jeanty is a trusted option for fantasy owners, even as a rookie this year.
I like both those picks. Jonathan Taylor has burned me time and time again. Can't trust that guy. Ashton Jeanty, he'll be talented. Not sure what that offense is going to look like outside of him and Brock Bowers with Geno Smith at quarterback. You never know with him. But Ashton Jeanty is going to get the bulk of the carries. He's going to be the focal point of the offense.
Last one, wide receiver bust, Deebo Samuel. We talked about the weapons for Washington. Deebo Samuel is an added weapon. He's coming off a very disappointing year for fantasy owners. I would also know because I had Deebo. I also had Brock Purdy, and I posted in the online worldwide sleeper app, I will never draft a 49ers player again because Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel made me miss the playoffs. He's coming off a bad year, unable to sustain anything consistent much over the 20s. And he's competing with Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson, some good weapons with going to get the football from Jaden McDaniels probably a little bit first. I just do not believe in Deebo Samuel. My wide receiver trust is Justin Jefferson. I mean, he's old, reliable. He doesn't matter who you play, throw it up to him, he goes and gets the ball.
Yeah, I love Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison suspended for the first couple of games of the season.
More targets.
Rondale Moore is now out for the season, another weapon they were supposed to have. So there's more targets for Justin Jefferson to go around. I think the only one that might steal targets from him is actually the running back, Aaron Jones.
Yeah, Aaron Jones, very multidimensional. Don't sleep on him. Those are the Buster Trust weekly picks. We've reached the end of our show. We really appreciate you for hanging out with us for this Football Frenzy edition of Full Court Blitz. I'm KJ McCurley. So much and so long from myself and Alex Baumann. You have a great evening. Wonderful day.